comes galloping through the door. But let's go ahead and get started. For those of you that are joining us on Route 29 television, if you go to the panels and meetings tab and look for advisory panel documents, you'll see the agenda and the presentation posted for today. For anyone here that needs a brief respite, it's down the hall and to the right. If we have to vacate the building for any reason, it's back out the front door to the left, down the street, and circle back into the parking lot, back around the building. We've got a fair amount in our agenda today, so we'll keep going at a pretty good clip, but let's start with our brief introductions. Chip.
Chip Boyles with the Planning District Commission and NPO.
Morgan Butler, Southern Environmental Law Center.
Mark Graham, Albemarle County.
Brad Sheffield, Albemarle County Board of Supervisors.
Joel.
Joel D'Annunzio, VDOT Charlottesville residency.
Dave Covington, VDOT Charlottesville resident.
Linda Cullip, VDOT IT.
Hal Jones, VDOT Charlottesville residency.
Lou Hatter, VDOT Communications.
And
Karen with Charlottesville Fashion Square.
And Kristen Sanka, City of Charlottesville, and Chris Engel sends his regrets.
yeah, he did send me a note. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, last meeting we had about the same number if you kind of look at everything in big round numbers. The same number of people tuning in, watching. As we've said before, the number of streams just reflect people dropping off and coming back on, or connections being cut and coming back on. And the average minutes per stream, 20 minutes. That's all been real steady, I'd say for about a year now. So for the 20 people out there, we invite you here someday to come and actually see you. Go ahead. For the last period, we did have 7 emails come into the Route 29 Solutions inbox. One suggested improvements to the left turn lane from Route 250 East to Hydraulic Road, and Lou got a nice note back to those folks advising them that that wasn't part of these projects, but that we did have the Hydraulic Road and the Hillsdale South PE study out there that would be coming up after we finish all of these projects. There was one, and actually, as I recall, this is someone that had to take a family member to a doctor appointment very early in the morning and wanted to know about the lane closures on Route 29 widening, and Lou got the correct information and helped that person out. And then the other 5 just wanted to be added to the weekly traffic alerts and the newsletter email list, which we took care of. There was a repeat comment on the kind of live portion, interactive portion of the website, and it was a repeat comment about the condition of the pavement in the right turn lane to Albemarle Square. And Dave and I have talked about this a few times, and I've got to say I tend to agree more than disagree with that comment. It could be better. It doesn't ride as good as it could. It doesn't look as good as it could. But it's complicated a little bit by the fact that there's some work still going on there, and there's some new work down closer to the entrance for a storm drain. And there's no practical sense in doing too much until that storm drain work gets completed. If you make that right turn now into Albemarle Square, you'll see some steel plates down closer to the entrance. When that work is finished, we're going to sit down with the contractor and get a reasonable plan in place to improve that right turn lane, including some lane definition. When you come around that radius right now, traveling west on Rio Road, it's pretty tight. You have the barrier, which will be there a couple more weeks, and you kind of lose the lane. It's easy to get out a little further to the left than you need to right at that point. That's all a long way of saying that I appreciate this individual bringing this up to us a couple of times. We're not ignoring it, just got a little more work to do before we can get in there.
That little more, how long is that likely to take before that can be responded to?
The storm drain that extends up that lane will be, they're working at the bottom now, working up, so it's probably going to be, I would estimate about a month. You know,
Yeah,
sometime
not bad, not bad.
early spring.
It's not what you want if it's the entrance you use, but the work's got to get done, and there's, you know, we don't want to spend money recklessly and then not have it be significantly improved anyway. But I understand that concern and expect people to keep us on our toes there. The project hotline got one call, and it was really, Chris, as I understood it, more somebody wanting to be clear of the method of that the tiebacks weren't being driven, but were being drilled. And I think you talked to that
Correct.
individual.
That's correct, Phil. It was a response to the mass mailing where we sent the
Right,
letters out.
that's right.
And he had heard the pile driving on the original piles.
Right.
And he saw that in there and thought it was going to be the same.
Yeah.
We clarified that.
Thank you, thank you. And I do know that I think the Lane Corman folks also wrote a little article for a community newsletter, for one of the neighbors.
VDOT did.
VDOT did.
Yes.
VDOT did. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Panel feedback. We're going to keep this accidents up here because I know Pete especially has been interested in this comparative data. It's just simply not available yet. Joel is checking it regularly. If you'll recall, this comes from a statewide database that VDOT's not in control of. So there's just no way to do any comparison of year over year until the data is populated. I would expect this, we thought it would be before this meeting for November.
As of yesterday, it's over.
As yesterday, it wasn't. There were 2 accidents on Monday. February 1st was Monday. There were two accidents. One involved, both of these were on Route 29 southbound. One north of Ryle Road, one south of Ryle Road. The one north of Ryle Road involved 3 vehicles. A car rear-ended a car and pushed that car into another one. And I'm just going by the information you got. The person who was the first rear-ender admitted to looking at their cell phone and didn't stop in time. The second one was a person pulling out of Wendy's, so now south of Rye Road, pulling out of Wendy's and hit a car in the far left. Hit a car in the far left lane.
Said, at the time that the police got there, that the cars had been moved already, so they.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But there was no, because these were both daytime accidents, so there was no construction underway. But we'll continue to keep an eye on accidents in the
Phil, one
in the
thing,
area.
just to
Yes.
clarify, the one that was north of the intersection, the first vehicle stopped at the stoplight.
Yes.
Second
Yeah.
vehicle stopped, third vehicle hit the second vehicle,
Right.
pushed it.
Right. Yes. The 2 cars were stopped at the stoplight as they should, and I'm sure it was a very important reason for looking at their cell phone while they're driving. But really, it just emphasizes, again, how ridiculous it is to be doing that and driving. I wish I could say I was 100% clean in that regard, but I work real hard at remembering that it's just completely unnecessary.
Do you have later in the agenda, or is this a good place, were there any issues with the snow? 'Cause that's been since we met.
John, do you want to say something about snow? And John, I'm sure you don't.
No, I don't.
If we're talking about it in the work session, I mean, I can cover
Yeah.
that. 'Cause we were
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
And, you know, Joel obviously is responsible for the whole area.
Anything that went wrong, Dave will be
We'll blame
bouncing
Joel.
over to
Yeah.
Joel.
What's new?
It was a challenging storm. I mean, Joel had set up his normal plow operators. We had had meetings between VDOT and Lane Corman well in advance of any storms, probably a couple of months in advance to prepare for it. And then also one right before the storm. Lane Corman had folks on site all weekend, as did VDOT at our co-location site. The steel plates worked very well. The plows just were able to drive right over them. To my knowledge, we did not have a single accident during the storm within the project limits on 29 Orion Road. We also had Lane Corman helping with loaders remove snow with the barrier walls on 29 widening. That snow will start building up and you'll lose a lane. So they were constantly going up there removing snow in conjunction with the plow truck drivers, and then clearing it up, keeping it out of the way on 29. So all in all, very successful. We're very happy with how things turned out. We do hope that's the last snowstorm we have this year, but it did work very well, so we're happy about that.
We talked, you might just talk a minute about Route 29 widening, because we talked a bit about the blower.
Yes.
And I understand that maybe our expectations were not completely met with the blower.
I was there.
Just to put Joel on the
Well,
spot.
yeah, I have something to add on.
Yeah.
Well, VDOT did work with one of our plow contractors. They got a snow blower that was mounted on the front of a skid steer. It was a rubber track skid steer, and it worked great in fresh snow. They were driving it down Asheville Boulevard. It was blowing snow. When we ran it up against the barrier wall, that snow is kind of slushy, icy, and it was only a small portion of it instead of the whole width of the blower. It just wasn't working very well, so we abandoned that, and that's when we brought the loader in from Lane Corman, which did work very well. So,
Okay.
you want to add something? Yeah.
We're going to buy a couple new snow blowers this year.
I mean, they work great in that fresh snow. They really do. But when you
Good.
can't feed the whole front end.
Yeah.
It doesn't work very well.
Yeah. All right. All right. Thank you, Chip, for asking about that. This is probably my favorite topic of anything that we've ever discussed here, and that's the staining of the walls.
It's about art and beauty.
Last time I gave you how we tracked down the label on the cans. We knew all these numbers and all these properties of the paint, and said that this was the paint that was used to mix the stain at McIntyre. And Dave kind of mumbled over here, no, that was Metacritic, which I chose to largely ignore, thinking, no, certainly these were right. Well, by golly, it turned out that last week the numbers were the paint mixes for Metacritic. We've now gone back to a person that I think's become a key resource for us. The guy that happened to do the staining on the John Warner Parkway, did the staining on the Metacritic Bridge, and did the staining on the McIntyre interchange, and we now know what we're talking about to replicate the staining at McIntyre. And that's what will be used for the retaining walls at Rio, the noise walls at the Best Buy ramp, and the parapet wall and the barrier walls for the Berkmar Bridge. And Morgan came up after the meeting and said, Dave said something about Metacritic. And I even then was still in denial that we could have possibly had the wrong one. But now we got it. And what we've also learned is that in this business of staining, in spite of all the color numbers and palettes and names, the deal is you hire someone, you show them what you want, and it's up to them to replicate that stain. So thank you again. Thank you for pointing out that it wasn't McIntyre. Thank you for circling back, Morgan, to Kennan to make sure which one we were after. And that is the saga of the stain. So we've got it now, and we did make it through the week, Morgan. Yeah, so that's good.
Thanks, everybody, for your work and tracking that down. you know, some kind of special designation for being the person who.
Well, and we should bring Andrew Scott here. There's a young kid back at the office trailer who now knows everything there is to know about paint stains. So, the open discussion period, and Karen, I would like you to start. I would like you to just talk, if you don't mind, a little bit about what
Communication.
the importance of accurate communications and making us aware of misinformation when you become aware of it.
So I became aware this week through different sources that some of the retailers at the mall thought that the project was going on for 4 years. And I double checked with y'all to make sure nothing had changed on the timeline. And also that there was advertisements being run in other markets that businesses along the corridor were only open from 10 to 5.
You saw them.
Well, I saw one saying, I jumped the gun a little bit, they were saying that because of the construction on 29, that you can't get to those businesses, so you should come to ours.
Where is this being?
It's in Waynesboro. It's a car dealership.
It's a car dealership, so to drive business to their dealership, they're saying, don't go to. But it's just a specific private business, because we were trying to determine if it was a VDOT communication.
Yeah.
And actually, I was told it was from Fredericksburg, so maybe they're doing the same thing.
Well, Karen, I was so glad that you bounced that our way. I mean, you know, when you read it the first time, kind of your initial reaction is, oh, come on. But then you think, well, hold on, wait a minute. Somebody somewhere said this. You know, that at first it was going to go on for 4 years. Let me assure everybody that the schedule has not changed at all. And then this advertising issue. And we, through 2 different sources, just to make sure that it wasn't something that VDOT may have inadvertently done, Dave checked sources out, and Lou checked all of his media sources and his colleagues in the Fredericksburg district. And VDOT certainly is not doing any advertising to say don't go to Route 29 businesses. Now, it did occur to me, and you and I exchanged a note about this, of wondering, well, could this be a private business doing some advertising that maybe contains some misinformation? And I think this is going to be important when we get to agenda item 9 and the advertising campaign that will be starting as part of the business assistance work to make sure that people have the right information here.
And I would say, I mean, that's great information because we've spent very little time about advertising outside of our immediate market area. That may need to change.
Well, not only that, but it's good information for retailers.
Yeah.
You know, if you're a retailer here and you know that a competitor is putting out some, I'm sure unintentionally so, misinformation, it's important to
Get the right.
to get it right. But that was very helpful, Karen. Did you have any other items, Karen, for future agendas or anything you'd like to?
No, just a brief back on the snow, which I'm sure we're all tired of hearing about snow. But thank y'all so much. I know that y'all got us at the mall to help with safety issues, Lane Corman, with one of our entrances, and that helped a lot.
You're welcome.
Brad?
Have you all been able to give any attention to the signal discussion that we had last time?
Joel, did you see that last note from Grant? Yes,
I had spoken with Grant about 2 issues after the last meeting. The one at Rio Road, and they're looking into whether they can remove the green phase on Rio at night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Left turns.
A waste of time. They know that the concern is, well, they know that they can make it all red all the time. The concern is if it's all red all the time in those hours, are there going to be enough gaps to take a right? And I don't know, that's what we don't know yet. So if there's not enough gaps to take a right from Rio, either north or southbound, that means we'd have to give some sort of right turn green phase, and that's what they're not sure they can do yet. So it's that's still a work that they're, because we don't want to make it all red and then have people taking unnecessary risk to take a right, but the gap is not there in a one-lane operation. So that's the issue there that we need to figure out. And
But can we figure it out before the next meeting?
I hope so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause-
Especially figured out before May.
yeah. Well, I think we all got kind of, we kind of got behind last week also after that. But the other issue is at Hillsdale, and I'll tell you what happened at Hillsdale. The safety issue that was occurring out there that was causing angle collisions was due to, there was the left turn signal. People wanted to take a left turn, I think, on Northfields or Hillsdale, correct? And what they didn't realize is because of the two lights so close to each other, the opposing traffic, if you were sitting in the left turn lane, you could see the lights in the through lanes turning red. What people didn't know in the left turn lane was the opposing traffic was not necessarily turning red at the same time.
Right.
Because it had a lag signal. So they changed the sequence of that because we're seeing angle collisions. And we talked about that a while ago. You had brought that up. The problem is it caused other issues with the operation of the signal. So they're looking at the overall timing of that signal to see if they can address the issue of those two working better together. So both of them, we understand the problems there. It's whether we can come up with good solutions to address.
Well, we'll need to bring something back in a couple of weeks, at least, if nothing else, a status on where we are there.
And the evening lights on 29 and Rio, I don't know if the being red all the time will create that much of a problem, but definitely during the shutdown of across in May and beyond, I can see the volume of traffic. Yeah, I can see it. So you got two problems there. One is just figuring out, and Karen, it was after 9 o'clock when you can't make a left or cut through. It's like the light was still turning red and it's still backing up traffic for no reason. And that seems to be easier. It seems to be during the day when after May 23rd that's going to create quite a bit of congestion.
Right.
The lights turn red. So good luck.
I think it's probably
There's a simple fix, just taking those heads down.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah. Yeah.
It's how,
Okay.
It's how smart that controller is in this.
Well, but we need to have something back here that speaks to the period between now and May 23rd and May 23rd through September 2nd. Kristen?
I appreciated your sending out the 90% plans for the Hillsdale project before we got here, because I immediately posted it on Facebook.
Oh,
and
okay.
was surprised at how many people were interested and either liked it or said something about it.
Okay. Yeah, all of those, I should have let you know, all of the plans now for all the projects are out there under the...
But just when there's an update like that, to
Yeah.
get it out to us so we can pass it on.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Good. Mark?
As far as future agenda items go, it's February now, May's going to be here before we know it. I was thinking it'd be helpful at one of our upcoming meetings, I don't know that it necessarily needs to be our next meeting, but coming up pretty soon, if we could sit down with the kind of detour route map, just make sure that we all understand it and go through different scenarios so that we can be effective diplomats for the general public and telling them how to get around in different ways. And one related question, I've been telling folks that the closures now in the evenings are going to be similar to what happens during that summer period so that they could go out and do kind of a test run now. Is that accurate enough to be good advice, or should I?
I think it is pretty accurate, especially the detour routes.
Right.
One of the benefits that we got, you all will recall that we opened up the temporary crossovers earlier than we had initially anticipated. The secondary benefit of that is people now know very well how to use them. They've gotten used to them. And similar to the detour routes, I mean, if you drive it once during the day, I know all these roads, I've put it together, and then they've got it down. What we've seen recently, or actually for the past several months with the detour routes, is people understand them. They're using them the way they should be. I mean, not everyone is using them the way they should be used, but most people have gotten used to it. So I don't see any negative impact of that about at night.
But
That route.
the condition during the day, during the closure period, the condition during the day will not be the same as the lane closures during the night now on Route 29.
No, not the lane closures, but I think what you're referring to is the crossover median. Because for those triple lane closures and the work that has to occur in the median,
Right.
the crossover is closed, you can't make lefts or straight
Right,
through on the
right.
road, so you have to use a detour route.
That's what I mean, right?
Yeah,
The
okay.
fact that you can't cross from one side of Rio to the next during evenings, that's going to approximate, you can't make left turns. That's roughly what will be the case in May through.
Yes, yes,
But the
yes.
number, you're correct, Phil, the number of
Yeah.
lanes will be different.
Right, the number of lanes will be
Lanes
different.
during the day.
Yes.
So my mother always encouraged me for job interviews or anything to make sure I'd done one test run and knew how to get there. That's kind of the
Yeah.
advice I'm giving to people when I'm saying
Yeah.
doing it at the right time is a good way to test that out now. So I just want to make sure I wasn't.
Yeah, and we'll definitely add an agenda item. I'd say in March. If it's not the next meeting, we'll catch it in one of the March
We're
meetings.
talking about the get around that.
Well, the get around maps, the whole detour issue, that whole package. Yeah.
Thanks.
Chip. Henry?
I've got ladies.
All right, let's take a look at the milestone charts. For the Rio GSI, the utility relocations barely missed the end of January, but missed they did. So that did carry over early into just this week to wrap up those utility relocations. The abutment piles, we got that at 100%. What you'll see if you look, and I know it's not the easiest to look up here, I added the last meeting's percent complete in parentheses, and then the current percent complete just to the right of the parentheses. So some changes, retaining walls bumped up another 5%. We had the signals finished up last week. Utility relocations are moving along on the widening. The right-of-way acquisition is finished now there. Down to Berkmar, right-of-way acquisition progressed from 40 to 60%. Excavation for the south abutment, we were able to turn that green and actually a little ahead of schedule, I think, on that. The 90% plans, that was a big milestone last week. Let me tell you, on Hillsdale, that was huge, and I know some folks at McCormick Taylor probably got sick of emails and phone calls saying, "Are you going to get it? Going to get it? Going to get it?" But the city and the VDOT team and the city's consultant really pulled together on that. The MSE wall, I think we had that 100% last time. So pavement widening, still work down at Best Buy ramp is progressing. The sound barrier continues to be a little bit ahead of schedule, and we want to keep that that way. You know, this is a big box on this chart right now, and that's getting Best Buy out of there before May 21st. So there's a lot of attention being paid to that. Do you have any questions on the milestones? I think, Mark, I thank you again for kind of encourages us to put it together this way, and Henry encouraging us to do the same for construction as we did for all of the design phase. This is, I know it's helpful to me.
All right, so I did want to clarify what I understood with the Route 29 widening. After the Phase 1 paving is finished, that's when you'll swap over the detour. So that would be in the June timeframe for the.
Yeah, this chart is going to get flushed out, extended,
Right.
with other work activities. Hopefully this month, we should get that re-baseline schedule from Lane Corman, and then we'll extend these other activities so you know what's happening after these. Mark's question was about the crossovers. Dave, say that again.
When the detour will start, when you'll shift the traffic over to the other side.
On the widening?
On the widening. That'd be right after the phase 1 paving is done.
Yeah, well, they'll actually shift it over to the median. I mean, they won't ever shift it all the way over to the opposing lane. So they shift northbound to the median, work on that section over there, shift it back, shift southbound over to the median.
Somehow I had the idea we were shifting it all over to the westbound side.
No.
No.
There's not enough.
There's good news.
That's good news.
Yeah.
Meaning losing a lane and using one southbound one?
Yeah.
No. Okay. No, we're always maintaining those 2 lanes in each.
2 lanes in each direction.
During the daytime. Correct.
All right, Dave, you want to take us through the project updates, and then Hal, you'll be on deck for Hillsdale.
Okay, good afternoon. Start with the 29250 interchange. This week, installation of storm drain structures, they're still working on those. That's kind of what a lot of the attention has shifted to. Once the median of 29 was, for the most part, completed, there's a few touch-up items there. Subgrade preparation on 250 westbound for that widening area, as well as the median where the turn lane extension is. I think they finished up the turn lane extension, but the widening area behind the barrier wall, they're still working on that. Beginning the sound barrier post installation, they started that early this week. Have already made good progress. I think this morning when I drove through, it looked like they had about 15 of the vertical posts installed. So what will happen next is they'll take those precast noise wall sections and slide them down between the posts and then put the cap on top. The foundation drilling, so we have 2 different types of foundations for the noise walls. We have what are called caissons, which are basically steel tubes that were in the fill from the mechanically stabilized earth walls, the retaining walls. So that's what they're working on now, and then they actually have to drill for the foundations for the sound walls be on either side of that and on the eastbound side of the road. Next slide. Significant lane closures this week, inside and outside lane closures. This really depends on the type of work they're doing. If they're working over on the shoulder, mobilizing some materials in for the noise walls or the storm drains, they'll do outside lane closure. If they happen to be working that day on the median, that extension of the left turn lane, they'll do an inside lane closure. So it'll kind of shift back and forth depending on what activity is going on that day, but it'll always be at least one lane open in each direction. And then ramp shoulder closures as they have been doing for a while on the storm drain installations at the exit and entrance ramps for Barracks Road. Next slide. Over the next 2 weeks, completing the storm drain structures in the median, continuing the storm drain structures along Barracks Road ramp, continuing the installation of the sound barrier posts, and the subgrade preparation for the widened section along 250 westbound, and the lane closures associated with that are the exact same lane closures that were occurring this week, depending on the work for inside and outside lane closures. Any questions on 29250? Kristen?
This is, because I've not been here for the whole time, I should know this, but how are the people who live behind where the sound wall will be being communicated with? Are there regular communications, or do they just know who to call if there's a question?
Well, surprisingly, we had very early outreach to them. I know Lou and I spent most of the day over there visiting all the property owners and answering questions up front. And we haven't heard any issues from them, unless somebody else has heard.
I haven't either, and that's why I wondered if you all were communicating with them regularly, or if they're just...
Periodically, but quite honestly, they know who to contact. They've got my contact information.
And they know when it's going to be done?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they're very aware of the dates and when the completion date is. Quite honestly, they had some issues that we addressed very early on, and they have been fine with everything.
I was paying attention then, but I haven't heard anything since, so I'm glad to know that that means that there's at least not to you complaints. But
yeah, there's some very patient folks living in that neighborhood.
Well, I imagine they know that it's going to get better soon.
Yes, and actually they like the fact that there's going to be that sound wall there, which doesn't exist or didn't exist prior to that, and the fact that it's going to have some architectural treatment to it as well, we discussed with them.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions on 29250?
The one question I keep hearing, the one I keep hearing the most, is the Barracks Road on-ramp. And people are very anxious to know when that's going to return to some sort of semblance of what it was before.
Yeah, I have an idea of that, but what I'd really like to do is check with the project team just to make absolutely sure. I think that's within the next 2 to 3 weeks, but I do want to check and just make sure, so if we can get back to you maybe tomorrow.
That's fine.
And Philip, if you can just email that information out there on the panel.
Yeah.
I don't want to tell you the wrong date.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, good question. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, next slide. Move on to the right-of-grade separated intersection project. Under drain, grading, curbing for the widening in the corner. We've seen some progress on this recently, so it's kind of starting to take shape, especially in the southwest quadrant of the intersection there from Hardee's. You kind of see what that's going to look like now. That work is just kind of an ongoing process. It will be for a little while. Island demolition. 29 southbound to Rio westbound, they have to get rid of that island there so that they can do the widening and shift everybody over for next summer, or excuse me, this summer, not next summer, this summer, so to maintain the number of lanes southbound that they need to. Pile installation for the retaining walls and the concrete. Again, these aren't driven piles. These are auger set in place for concrete. And then we have the tieback anchors a little bit further down, which are the drilled in. Those are going very well. We're just getting started. I think yesterday they had about 12 to 15 of them complete already, moving at a pretty good pace. I think they'll be able to do about 12 a day. Storm drain installation we spoke about in the northeast quadrant there, Fashion Square entrance. We've got some large pipes that are going in that's taking a little while. They're very deep, but they'll work their way back up the roadway, and then 2 other quadrants as well, southwest and southeast. Continuing the Fashion Square retaining wall, performing conduit bores for signals. Most of these are done, but they have some tie-ins at the Berkmar-Rio signal, which is being reconstructed in the very near future. In case anybody was not aware of that, that is part of the Rio GSI project to do a complete rebuild of that signal. And completing the gas main relocation, as Philip mentioned earlier, for all intents and purposes, that was completed last night. They've got their main charged with gas now, so they've got 2 parallel, but now they have to just kind of purge the existing one of the gas that's in it, things of that nature. So the majority of the work is done. There's just some finished work to do. Next slide. So lane closures this week, very much like what we've been seeing over the past 2 to 3 months, is the Rio crossover being closed at night for the pile installation and the tieback installation and all those activities that are happening in the middle of the road. And in order to do that, it takes triple lane closures northbound and southbound. So nothing different than what we've seen over the past few months. Next slide. Next 2 weeks, same widening, finishing up the island demolition and new asphalt in there, pile installation and concreting, storm drains, Fashion Square retaining wall, tiebacks, almost the exact same work except for the gas main relocation drops off, and we start the form work for abutment A. So if you recall, we talked about how we were going to build these abutments for the bridge. We have the piles, but we're also building the actual abutment, which is the concrete piece that sits on top of the piles to hold the bridge up. That's being built before next summer, so all that's in place, which will greatly speed up the process this summer of setting the beams. And then some service main connections for the gas line. Exact same closures over the next 2 weeks that occurred this week, the triple lane closures and the median being closed at Rio. Any questions on the Rio GSI?
Like always, abutment A, abutment B, I never know which one is.
Abutment A is on the east side, abutment B on the west side, yeah. Everybody gets them mixed up. We get them mixed up. So
it's really E rather than A, I guess.
Yeah, E and W.
E for,
yeah. That might not be a bad idea.
Okay. It's okay.
I might suggest.
I'll have to try to remember to write in here.
Yeah.
But it'll stay at it.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. Okay.
So,
we know what it is.
As long as the people actually doing it know what it is.
Yeah, sure. Any other questions on Rio? Okay, moving on to 29 widening. Installation of temporary drainage structures. This is going to occur for quite some time as they build the grade up in the median. They have to extend drainage structures, temporary drainage in, continue that median grading. Utility relocations, we have the same utilities still relocating, but we've added Lumos now. So we have a fourth utility. CenturyLink is almost complete. They'll be complete next week. Grading for Pond 3. Pond 3, we could call Pond Dance at Asheville Boulevard, but that was cleared and they're going to start the grading. They were hoping to get in there last week, but a lot of snow in the area, so they just focused on other things. But got in there this week, and they'll continue that next week. Preparation for culvert jack and bore under 29. This is interesting because this is a method of putting a pipe underneath the 29 without digging a big trench in. So they go in, they have these reinforced concrete sections, and basically it's almost like a tunneling operation. So they can put those underneath the roadway without disrupting traffic, without creating a giant hole and causing future settlement. So that's going to start up next week. So they've been preparing for that this week, getting all their materials in, doing dry runs, things like that. Pond 2 clearing, just clearing an area for one of the other ponds that's on the project. Signal borings at Asheville.
Where is Pond 2?
It's further north on the alignment and on the other side of the road, if I remember correctly. I'm trying to remember exactly which one was taken. We might have to take Henry's suggestion so we can remember exactly.
Yeah, we'll get it.
Yeah. Signal borings at Asheville Boulevard, so they've got their temporary signal up, but since they can go ahead and get in there and they've got their signal contractors here, they're doing the borings for the permanent signals, so that conduit's already in place underneath Asheville Boulevard. DEQ site visit. Yesterday we actually had DEQ come and unfortunately, it was pouring rain all afternoon, but we did go over all the paperwork and plans and answer any questions they had. So they were happy with that and left and promised to come back another day for a visit. So that did go very well. Lane closures this week. Left lane closures northbound and southbound for various activities, getting materials in and out. But they're only doing those lane closures if they need them, so some nights those lanes will be open. If they're working on the other side of the road, working on the southbound side, both lanes might be open northbound. Next slide. Over the next 2 weeks, very similar, almost identical scope of work here, but they will actually begin the culvert jack and bore. And maybe we'll take some pictures of that, and we can.
Dave, I'm glad you mentioned that, because as we're going through these, I was thinking there's starting to be some routine to some of these operations. Some of them pretty key, and I know there's got to be people crawling around all over the place at night taking some pictures, I would imagine, Lou. And I think it would be good if, not for every operation every time, but for some of these key operations, to have a photograph or two that help explain exactly what's going on, plus also add some context to how the work is progressing at a particular place. Sure. I know at Rio, we've got the camera, which I expect will be popular this summer, but for some of these other areas, that'd be a great idea. What's a jack and bore installation look like? We see it and we get a picture in our mind, but
it is pretty impressive.
Other than Mark, probably nobody else is zeroing in on that.
Yeah, we've got some pretty large pipe, and
so
we'll get some pictures of that and work them into a presentation in the next meeting or two, so everybody can see that. If we go to the next slide, I'll just wrap up the lane closures for the next 2 weeks. Left lane closures northbound and south.
I assume this Fund 3 is not the same Fund 3 that was on the Rio.
No.
Yeah, a different Fund 3. Yeah.
Well, we have 2 stormwater basins on Rio, and because of how the design progressed, we have stormwater management basin 4 and 6. We don't have a 1, 2, or 3, or 5, 4 and 6. The only 2 because they've engineered those.
The earlier 3 reference was also on 29 wide.
Yes, that was work. That was work this week. Just next week.
Yeah.
So we.
Picture where it was.
Okay, thank you.
Now I understand better.
Okay.
It's the same Pond Street.
It's the same pond street.
Yes. Any, or Pond Day, or whatever we want to call it. Any questions on 29 Wide? We'll move on to Burkmar Extended, abutment A, which is on the south side of the river. They started driving pile today. So that's daytime work. We've kind of coordinated. I know, Lou, you went over to Doubletree and just let them know, in case you hear this noise, that's what it is. That should be a pretty quick operation. It's not going to take nearly as long as Rio. There's nowhere near as many piles. They should be done with that by mid next week. They also concrete up to a certain point on those piles after they're driven. Constructing the leveling pad. So here we've got another MSE wall, mechanically stabilized earth, just like the one on 29-250, that will go around the bottom of the abutment on the south side of the river. And we also had DEQ site visit. We have DEQ permits for Burkmar and 29 Widening, so those are the projects that they were interested in and the ones that we discussed. No lane closures this week. Over the next 2 weeks, finishing up the pile driving and concrete placement should be next week, constructing the leveling pad and beginning the actual MSE wall construction, which also should go very quickly. We have no traffic to deal with out there, so things tend to happen much quicker. And no lane closures associated with that work. Any questions on Burkmar?
Abutment A, pile driving, how's that different from what's on the chart for south abutment pile driving? It starts in
It isn't different. They're
oh,
way
you're
ahead.
just that far ahead.
They are that far ahead.
2 months ahead, 2+ months ahead.
One of the reasons for that is VDOT already owned all that property, so we didn't have to go through the right-of-way acquisition process, so they got started early.
Good deal.
Yep. Any other questions on Burkmar? Okay, move on to signal updates. Actually, we don't really have any changes from this from our last meeting. We're still, actually this week, Northwest Regional Operations met with their on-call contractor to go over all the improvements that are associated with those upgrades. So after that meeting, they'll finalize the schedule for those upgrades, and we'll have that hopefully next week. We'll have a schedule. They'll get to work, get started on all those upgrades so that they're finished in advance of May 23rd. Again, because that's going to help us with our maintenance of traffic during the summertime. Any questions on these upgrades? Okay, next slide, please. Hillsdale Extended, this week, as Philip mentioned, we did receive the 90%.
You want Hal to run through that, Dave?
Hal, okay.
Make Hal do it. Hal, I think I mentioned it before, Kristen, this may have been before you were here, I'm not sure. Hal is dealing directly with the city team and really taking a front position for VDOT, on the VDOT side.
Good afternoon. I checked the Pond 2. It's about 1,500 feet south of Pond 3 on the east side. So it'll be going northbound. You'll see that before you get to Ashwood Boulevard.
Thank you.
Hillsdale Extended, we did, as Philip said, have a major milestone last week with 90% plan submittal. We are looking at those plans this week, and we'll have comments back to the city and the design team by the close of business tomorrow on those, as well as the Stage 2 bridge plans. We are completing appraisal work on a couple of remaining parcels related to various issues and continuing to make offers to property owners. As of Monday morning, we had 14 offers out of the 24 properties that we're looking to acquire from. Finalizing the memorandum of understanding with the county. The county's been looking and coordinating with the city on that effort. We've gotten some initial feedback from the county this week. Still working through a few design detail issues on that.
Hal, that looks like it's all going in the direction it needs to go.
It is.
Right? Yeah.
It is. And that's another big one, yes. Finalizing the settlement and closing documents for the USPS, which has accepted the offer. So that's mainly a recordation, final closing documents piece of work now. Demolition plan revisions are underway. I think they've probably addressed some of those, if not all. There weren't but just a few of those with the updated plans. And their design team's working on an updated construction estimate to go along with these 90% plans to include the bridge and all related work for the road project. Next slide, please. In the next 2 weeks, the design team will take comments and begin on final road plans, which will be part of the bid package. They'll work on final bridge plans. They've done quite a bit of work on the plats to date. They've worked on those. We'll have final plats, which will need to be for recordation of properties with the right-of-way work. And special provisions are part of the bid package, which are being prepared now to go with the contract. Any questions on Hillsdale?
I might just add something. It's not so much a question, but I know with our subcommittees, we've begun discussions to say we've got to kind of regroup with the city and county representatives with a real push on the Hillsdale. There wasn't a whole lot to talk about with the businesses and Seminole Square and those until now, so we're kind of regrouping just to see what kind of neighborhood meetings, business neighborhood meetings and other things that need to be occurring.
Okay, well that's good, because Hillsdale's happening. Right. I mean, our 9:30 call on the design build projects is lively enough, but the 9 o'clock call on Hillsdale can get pretty lively. There's a lot going on between the plans and the right-of-way acquisition. So good.
My question is, we're not going to find any aesthetic abominations within city limits this time.
Aesthetics along the corridor of that roadway are a topic of discussion. I can say that.
It's an urban setting.
Yes.
Are there any guardrails?
And what color are they?
We're naming them after Henry. Well, it is that aesthetics are a topic, and were a critical topic of discussion last week.
Right.
That could have had considerable implications that we resolved around the area of the roundabout, and actually adjusted some temporary easements that needed to be adjusted, and created a permanent landscaping easement that was very important to the city for a portion of that roundabout near Seminole Square. We had a lot of conversations about that.
I'm glad you do.
Yeah, a lot. No, it's a good point.
I won't be upset this time.
Dave, do you want to do the budget? And be sure to kind of clear the chart for everybody and tell them what that top column means, the contract value, invoiced, which is different than amount paid, and then that exposure item, the things that we add cost money. I think that'd be good to kind of explain the chart.
Yeah, there's a lot of numbers on here. Some of you may just kind of eyes gloss over when you look at it, but just to kind of put things into perspective of where we're at with all the projects, I think this tells a pretty important story. We'll start off with the design build projects, that contract. So we've got all 3 projects under one contract, so we're going to talk about a contract as opposed to individual projects.
So just remember, when the design build contract was bid, it's a number for all 3 projects, not 3 numbers that equal 116, but one number for all 3 projects. So that's what we're managing.
Yes. So our contract values, you recall, this is the number that everyone saw after the bids were opened, and everybody breathed a sigh of relief because we were under $117 million. That has not changed, other than the change orders I'll get to in just a second in the third column over. But invoiced as of the first of this month. So how much has Lane Corman sent us bills for, and how much, quite honestly, have we paid? We have a prompt payment requirement. We pay these very quickly. So that's $41 million that we spent so far. There's a lot of work that's occurred already. This includes a lot of the materials that they've ordered, the box beams, the steel, piles, all those things that all of it may not be installed already, but it's been ordered. We have a process of, we pay a certain amount or a certain percentage when work is started, a certain percentage of work when it's completed. So if you take the 41 million and compare it to the 116 million, this should give a pretty good indication of how far we've come in such a short period of time. In quite honestly, less than a year, we're getting pretty close to halfway pretty soon on that contract, which is indicative of where we are on the Rio GSI project and all the work that's occurred at night, even though it may not be so visible during the day. A lot of work has occurred.
And in round numbers, Dave, of that 41 million, probably 28 to 30 of it is at Rio.
Yes. Yeah, that's where the vast majority of the work's been done so far. Now, 29 widening is starting to catch up to it a little bit, but it's a lot of that money has been spent at Rio. So change orders. So anytime we change some item of a contract, that's a change order, or work order, you can call it whichever. But we've had 4 change orders approved to date. Various things from design changes to the first issuance of the pedestrian lighting, things like that that went through and were approved so that they could actually go through and finalize things. That was the first part. We've got an extension to the pedestrian lighting now, but that wasn't included in the original contract. We had a requirement for lighting the intersection within 100 feet of the intersections, so that was a change. So approved change orders to date, $99,000 or $99,149. The column beside it, exposure, we label this anticipated change orders. These are things that we know now have a fairly high confidence level of moving forward. A lot of this is design related to the aesthetic changes themselves. There's a few other things that are captured in there, just things that we know that we'll have to address. But this is what we can foresee as being included in the cost of the contract in the future. And this is something that we'll keep an eye on as we move forward to make sure that we're kind of in line and we're not getting out of control as far as change orders are concerned. All of this is within our budget for the projects. We haven't exceeded the budget for these change orders as of right now. So remaining contract value.
But Dave, just back on exposure, just for a minute. Dave said these are currently unpriced items that we rightfully expect to be added to the contract. And a big part of this, it's not all of the architectural treatment, but the stamped asphalt at the driveway entrances, all the way down the local lanes, extension of pedestrian lighting, the staining. Can't remember if the staining was in the contract or not.
It was, but there'll be a little bit of a modification.
Yeah, there'll be a little modification to that. So these aren't surprises necessarily. They're things that we've agreed ought to be added as part of the project and an estimate as exposure, as those items become defined, priced, and approved. Exposure would move over to an approved change order, and the amount of exposure would come down by the same amount. These two numbers, for me, are, I know what the contract value is and what the contract says. Okay, now how are we managing real work in the field and changes? So these are very important numbers to monitor. Go ahead, Dave, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Remaining contract value you see here, $75.8 million. So that kind of, again, gives you that comparison of where we're at right now versus where we're going to be come 2017, October 2017. and total anticipated expenditures at completion. So what this is the contract value plus the approved change orders. Change orders will actually, we pulled it out because when we approve a change order, it becomes part of the contract. So it's contract value plus change orders plus exposure, what we know about and anticipate. So this is what we would spend on that contract at the completion, a little over $119 million.
Let me see, because it seems like I might have got confused. Wouldn't the anticipated just be the contract value plus the exposure?
It would be if we had not pulled out the approved change orders so that you could see how many change orders. This number right here, that plus that number is our new contract value. So 116.7 million plus 99,000 is our new contract value because we've amended the contract. We've added that word. But we wanted to pull it out to show you what has changed so far. Any other questions on the design build projects? And we'll kind of go through these other ones. And they're set up a similar way.
And the fact that the anticipated expenditures at completion is greater than the contract value is okay because we're managing within VDOT's budget.
Okay.
Which is not shown on this chart.
Yeah, and we talked about that for a long time.
I imagine.
Yeah, you know, you don't want to necessarily put all your money on the table for everybody to see,
In front of the kids.
because there's a real propensity to spend it. You know, the point is to not do that.
I didn't call any Norman kids, by the way.
Yeah. We'll manage this very carefully, but Chip, from here going forward, if there was a dollar approved for a change order, it would move from exposure over to change orders, and those numbers would always balance.
Okay.
Unless we agreed to do something new that needed to be added to exposure.
Back to, and I agree, it's not that important with what the original budget. I mean, it's very important, but not what we're doing. We get towards the end of the project, and it keeps going as great as it's going now, and there's a balance.
And there's a balance?
Yes.
Then that's
goes back.
good.
Yeah, no question. I'm just thinking of if there was that one little pet thing that we could live without, but it would have been nice to do. Is there that opportunity for a change order towards the end?
Let me say it this way. We won't get to the end and say, we've got great news. We have $5 million we can spend on something. I mean, that shouldn't be done that way. What I would say is that the panel needs to continue to make their desires known, that we can manage or assess and consider and manage. When you get to the end, finishing is expensive. At the end is not the time to decide that you want to do more. And I'll tell you a very quick story. I asked a person one time to make a change to an elevator in a building. And the guy said, sure, I'll meet you out there. And this was a small change to an elevator in a building. And he said, yeah, I'll meet you. We met at 6 o'clock in the morning. We walked into this building. We looked at the elevator. And this was a contractor on job now. And he said, yeah, I'll do that, $2.5 million. I said, what you're telling me is you don't want to screw with this elevator. He said, absolutely. So, balances are returned to the allocations, right, John? Balances are returned to the pool of money available for allocations and need to be cleaned up,
Goes into the big pot back.
Goes into the big pot, or John gets to use it for something. I don't know. That's what John would wish. Because the same applies to them, right? Gee, I got some money left over. Can I go spend it somewhere? Well, there's a bridge in Bristol that didn't get fixed that maybe could use it.
Good. So 29,250 interchange, you know, we had a contract value of $11.1 million there. We have paid the contractor just under $6.3 million to date. So we're well along on that project. The expensive items are the retaining wall that's been finished up, so those bills are coming in now, the noise walls, all those things that, you know, quite honestly take a lot of time and effort that we've been wanting to see finished in here. So those are coming in, so we expect that number to go up pretty quickly as we move closer to May, because we will still be finished with that project come May 21st this year. Approved change orders to date, $92,000, a little over $92,000. We have a pretty big exposure here. There are things that we know about that were quantity differences. This is a design bid build project, so you look at quantities, and when asphalt is different than what we thought it was going to be, that's where a lot of those change orders come in, where in design build, that's not really the case. You give us a lump sum, you know, if we want something changed, we'll let you know, kind of thing.
And that's why I'm guessing that number is a bit more precise, because there's a number of quantities that you know there are some combination of overruns and underruns,
Yes.
times a unit price,
Yes.
and that's the math. And this is not unusual in a design bid bill.
No, not at all. Not at all. And quite honestly, when you look at the amount compared to the overall contract value, it's not alarming at all. It's something we're keeping an eye on. We got a little less than $5 million left in the contract. And again, when you look at the total anticipated expenditures at completion, $11.8 million, difference of $700,000 within our allowable range there. But, you know, again, something we're going to keep an eye on. There's change orders that we just don't know how to define them yet. But as we get closer to the end of the project, we'll know exactly what those quantities are and can rectify those change orders. Any questions on 29,250? Okay. And by the way, change orders work both ways. Sometimes the number goes down if work is removed from the contract as well. Adaptive signals. Our budget, when we first started this program, was $3.72 million. Invoiced as of February 1st, this number really hasn't changed a whole lot to $2.2 million. This is phase one. This is all of the infrastructure that went in. It was the majority of the cost of the adaptive system. And when we go back and put in the controllers and all that, it's much quicker, much less expensive situation there. I did add change orders. This is a contract that's being basically managed out of our Northwest Regional Operations. They're using on-call contractors. So it's not a traditional sign a contract with the contractor, hey, you go build it. So I didn't quite know what to do with the $125,000 that's associated with this additional signal improvement that we've been talking about on the hydraulic RIO loop. And I thought it was kind of appropriate to put it under change orders so that everyone can see it and kind of track, you know, does it change, does it go up, does it go down, you know, what happens with that. So we kind of treated it like a change order. And we threw some money there in the exposures because something's going to change. We don't know what it is. Some piece of equipment may fail and we have to go in and replace something that we didn't anticipate. Contract value remaining $1.6 million. Total anticipated expenditures at completion of a little under $3.9 million, $3.89 million. It's kind of where we thought we would end up with that. We always knew that we were going to do this additional signal improvement. We just didn't know to what extent. That $125,000 is well within the budget that we had initially talked about for that work. Any questions on adaptive system? Okay. That is, these three are our contracts that are under construction. So when we have up here construction contracts, those three are under construction. Hillsdale.
I moved Hillsdale up there. Positive, knocking on the door. Positive, thank you. Knocking on the door.
But what we've got here is our budget for Hillsdale. This is our construction budget of $11.2 million.
So it doesn't include
right of way. No.
right-of-way.
It doesn't include preliminary engineering. It doesn't include right of way. So that's kind of our starting point. You know, we know moving forward that when this thing is advertised, and we come in below $11.2 million, then we start tracking it like the other projects. Similarly, we have the two projects, hydraulic intersection and Hillsdale, which are preliminary engineering only. So we've just shown what the preliminary engineering budgets are. What's budgeted for that is $10 million each at this point.
Right.
So again, it's going to be quite some time before we even talk about that. That's all subject to a lot of things that can happen in the future. Any closing comments on the
Yeah,
budget?
I have some questions about that because I think we went through that before, and there was a question when those $20 million were going to be actually be approved to be spent. And at one point, somewhat to my surprise, I was told that was 6 years or more away.
No, I think it was fiscal year 2018.
Yeah, fiscal year 2018 is when the allocation.
Which is around
July 1st, 2017. So as we're finishing up these construction projects,
You're getting there.
these studies are starting to get underway.
And in that particular case, I feel very strongly that we have gone for an expressway, like it or not. You may want to call it whatever you want. That's the way we're going. And I always felt that you need to have very good preliminary engineering for the entire expressway, all the way from 250 to wherever it's going to end, somewhere at close to Greene County. And I think that's the way that money should be allocated, if you ask me. So that the community knows exactly what we've bought and what's coming down the road. That what we're doing right now is just the first phase. And again, that's my editorial comment.
We certainly, everybody has a lot of opinions on that. We've really not focused on it at all. I mean, that money we know is there in the future. Our focus has been these construction projects, and then in fiscal year 2018, as that money is appropriated, we'll start to look at that, but we haven't made any predispositions about what's going to happen or how it's going to happen.
But just so everyone knows, what's been allocated for those two projects is a preliminary engineering study. It's preliminary engineering only for the hydraulic 29 intersection and for the extension to Hillsdale South. It's very specific.
They are not funded for anything beyond that.
20 million seems to be quite a substantial amount that probably you can get what you need there plus.
I wouldn't argue that. I'm just saying what
May as well
it
use
is
it,
being specific.
wisely.
I'm having flashbacks to panel one.
Sure.
Our Danville and Lynchburg folks would welcome to hear you
I'll be at
say
the next
that.
meeting.
I still think.
But anyway, no, I know.
That you have 20 million, it's a generous amount.
It is.
You may want to put it to good use by doing not just those two things, but do more. Get more value out of those $20 million, that's what I'm saying.
In terms of keeping this updated going forward, I mean, clearly it's important information. There's no question about that. Is this something you would like to continue to see, maybe the first meeting of every month? I don't know that every 2 weeks. Certainly can, but or maybe put it on the agenda for the first meeting of every month?
I would actually encourage
Easier
the
for you to
second
do it?
meeting, because
Second
the way that our invoicing works is we receive our estimates
Okay.
on the 10th. So like
Your
today,
estimate on the 10th.
yeah,
Gotcha.
we'll receive another invoice in a few days. And that way, if we do it on the second meeting of the month, we'll have better information.
So do you want to bring it to us in 2 weeks or in 6 weeks?
Why don't we bring it in 2 weeks and then start a cycle of the second meeting of every month?
And I wouldn't think it needs this in-depth discussion. As long as we have it, we can look at it. And if
We'll look at it, and
something
I'll put the change so we're aware of the change
Yeah.
on each one. This is big stuff. I mean, projects go over budget $1 at a time, and they're late 1 day at a time. So every penny is a big deal to, not that Dave's never heard that before, John. But
I've never said it either.
That's one buck at a time, man.
Okay, any other closing questions about this?
Good job. All right, thank you. Next to staining, my second favorite topic is signing. This is I could tell you an interesting story about the fonts on signs, but we're not going to go into that. We kind of closed the loop on signing. This is the overview, Mark, just in a stick diagram. North there, so 29 northbound here, 29 southbound there. The first overhead sign northbound, 1,475 feet from the intersection. Coming the other way, 1,700 feet. And if you'll remember, these signs initially were kind of in the 800 feet range, and this panel said, "Wow, we want to pull that back." So that's been done. The lane split then is another 300 feet down the road, give or take, a little bit more on the southbound, and then the ground mounted signs would be located in advance of the intersection. The ground mounted, and we'll look at the actual signs. So this overhead sign structure, and then this is the green and white, and then these would be the blue and white ground mounted sign, which we did revise based on a comment that you all made at last meeting.
And that's on the exit.
And that's on the exit. So this is on the through lanes, this is on the local lanes. Exactly. If you'll recall, this is where we landed on the northbound signs. We stuck with the local and business, keyed that color into the ground mounted signs. And these, need to include the route numbers, both the U.S. route number and the, county route number. So that's the northbound sign. That's the southbound sign with this logo matches, and there's a lot of opinions about the logo, and I will say that this is an improved, what was the word? Approved?
It's an
approved sports mark?
No.
It's one of the approved logos.
Approved mark.
Approved mark by UVA. It's the same one that is currently further south at Best Buy, which will be replicated on the new overhead signs at Best Buy. We had some talk, if you'll recall, about is Lynchburg going to be on here, is Emmett Street on here, and I would say there was probably plenty of people that didn't think Emmett Street should be on. Some of the designers didn't think Emmett Street should be on there. Emmett Street is going to be on there. And this would be, because remember, the Charlottesville will be like Ryle Road and then the John Warner Parkway, only there will be signing up there that says trucks aren't allowed on the John Warner Parkway. So that's our southbound overhead signs. And then the ground mounted signs, we added the horizontal line between the quadrants and the next left and keep right. So these would be, give or take, 800 feet from the intersection on the local lane.
Is there a reason why the horizontal line is thicker than the vertical line?
Probably not.
I don't think it is.
It makes it look more important, and I don't think.
I'm not sure it is. I don't believe. I don't think
optical illusion.
I think it is an optical illusion.
Yeah, it's on the projection, but look on paper, the same.
Yeah.
paper,
Okay.
And you see it's the same.
Could somebody just check and make sure?
We will check and make sure.
Inadvertently.
As long as we don't go back and look at the staining colors.
It actually looks a little wider on.
We're going to stain all of these signs. But, this whole signing exercise is, it seems kind of mundane, but it's one of the important things that this committee really weighed in on. And now we have sign designs that can move forward into fabrication. And I think, just flip back one. Yeah, you know, we talked before, these are big honkers. You know, you get one of these signs down off of an overhead truss and look at it, 18 feet across, 14 feet high, these are big, these are big. Not unusually big, but they're bigger than you might think.
Bigger than a screen.
Bigger
than the screen.
Bigger than the screen, yeah. Just as a sideline, the Federal Highway Administration has just changed all the requirements for fonts on signs. And luckily, we don't have to worry about any of that because we've got ours underway prior to February 25th, 2016. But we could spend a week talking about fonts on signs, but we won't. So any questions on the signs? I mean, these are wrapped up and underway. You know, they may have been sent off for fabrication.
Overhead signs.
Overhead signs are off for fabrication. So thank you for all your help and input into this. All right, this is going to change just a teensy bit. Matt Thornhill is sick, so he's not here. Matt Thornhill is one of the co-owners of SIR. I don't think he's talked to this group before. We've had John Martin. He's John Martin's alter ego. John Martin is all excited and jumps around and points at stuff, and Matt's a little bit more serious. But Matt is a good guy, a great thinker. He's just sick, so we want Matt to get well. I've asked Chip Boyles and Lee to go through this presentation.
I have a city council retreat that starts at 4 o'clock at Morven, which is 30 minutes away. So when I slip out, it's not because I don't care about this topic.
Oh, okay. Well, let's just get right to it then. Chip, however you and Lee want to. Thanks for batting for Matt.
Talk to Matt too. I can't speak for Lee. I can't jazz it up like Matt can. He said he'd be more than happy to come back.
Yeah, we'll have him do that.
And as you'll see from the slides, in the next 6 weeks or so, there'll be a lot of things happening, and it may be good to bring him back because there could be some updates. So, but Lee and another representative from SIR presented to the Board of Supervisors last night. So I just let Lee.
All right, thank you. We haven't really tag teamed this yet, but you will go ahead and put the information
Kristen, while Lee's
out.
coming up, you know, the county put up $100,000 for business assistance. The state matched it 2-for-1. So Chip is sort of managing, and the subcommittee, a $300,000 pot to implement this business assistance work.
Right, and real quickly, before we jump into the collective marketing campaign, I did want to catch you all up on a couple of the other elements of the program that we've shared with you so far, because we have seen great partnership with the business community in some of these outreach efforts. So you all may remember that the business assistance program that the board approved had 4 categories of activities that we were going to be doing. One of them was technical, and that was really about building the expertise and the education opportunities. And I'm happy to say that we have, working with the Small Business Development Company, SBDC, we have had 11 training workshops on site out there so far, topics ranging from social media to general marketing to readiness to business resilience, all those kinds of topics. We've had 42 attendees at those sessions. We also, through SBDC, have arranged for 30 consultation/mentoring sessions. So a lot of engagement with the businesses out there in getting prepared for this. We also had a category of communication, a lot of strategies in those. Lou has been a huge, tremendous partner in making the communication things happen. One thing the county really has put emphasis on is the face-to-face kind of thing. So our economic development and community engagement staff has conducted 5 separate canvas efforts out there, going door to door with these businesses, providing materials, updating them about workshops, helping them through our grant process, et cetera, et cetera. Regulatory was another category. Mark has probably shared with you that we have had the board approve the Phase 1 and Phase 2 signage regulation changes that were really geared towards the construction period. and that the board will be considering permanent signage changes also to come along after that. The matching grant program, I wanted to mention to you all, in addition to the $100,000 that the board gave for the collective marketing campaign, they dedicated $50,000 for a matching grant program. The idea being that if businesses were willing to put their skin in the game, that the county would match that. So criteria were that this is in the Tier 2 project area. That means the Rio 29 intersection construction footprint. No grant exceeds $2,000. This is for small businesses, 100 employees or less. And also people to qualify had to attend one of the workshops or consulting sessions that I mentioned earlier, so that we knew that they were doing the most they could do to build their own resilience and capacity. And there are performance measures that they have to provide as a result of their grant award. So we just closed the grant process, and we ended up with 27 applications, which we thought was really exciting. The quick scan through there is that the great majority of them appear to meet the criteria. We may have to work with a few folks to get them there, but we will be able to fund all of those people if they end up qualifying with the $50,000 that we set aside. So I say that as an introduction because another one of the criteria of the grant program is they have to, on their advertising or marketing, also tie into the collective marketing logo that you're about to see and brand. So not only will we have this $300,000 working, we'll also have the leveraged impact of another $100,000 working to get that brand out there in front of people. So again, I'm not going to do this as well as Matt, but real quickly, first thing to stress is this was done by a subcommittee. We had as many as 10 at certain meetings, and probably usually more like 5 or 6 businesses representing the quadrants who met with us on a very regular basis through a lot of iterations of this program to get to what you're about to see here. So it was very much a community effort to get there. So this is Matt's presentation from last night. I'll abridge it a little bit, but basically talking about the overall communication strategies, revealing the creative concept and the initial materials, talking to you about the paid media ad, the public relations efforts, and also talk to you about a March 15th kickoff event. The communication strategies, we talked to you about this before, so none of these are too surprising to you. Really about encouraging residents, customers, shoppers, visitors to continue to support affected businesses in the corridor. This was now not about trying to lure people from other areas in the county. This was really about business loyalty and maintaining business patronage during a time where we knew that convenience would be a little bit challenged. Rio in 29 is really the nomenclature that we came up with, that the committee really felt was good in being the identifier for this, and you're going to see how that plays out a little bit. And really, the thrust of this is focusing on the human element, the idea that these are our friends, our neighbors, our colleagues that are running and managing these businesses, and through no fault of their own, they're going to be in the middle of a disrupted situation for a while, and that they deserve our support and a little bit of extra time and effort in order to keep them supported during the construction. So, overall message platform, Rio 29, worth the drive. We felt like that centered it geographically, pretty obviously on the area that we're talking about. And we felt like worth the drive really implied a lot of different positive messages. The idea that these businesses and the importance that they have to our economy and to being employed folks in the community are worth us taking a little time and a little extra effort to support. There was a lot of concern on the part of the businesses that we not whitewash this, that we not make this sound like no problem at all. The other thought was, don't make it sound like this is not something that we can't handle or survive. We're hardy business people here. We don't want this to be a panic and look like a disaster situation. We want to communicate that it's going to be a little inconvenient, but stick with it, get through it, and let's make it work together. The message strategy and components you can see here, it's about really circling motorists and residents with the message so they really can't avoid it. Newspaper ads, posters, decals, stickers, TV and radio, Facebook, a website, cable TV, and door hangers. And I think you're going to see some examples of those in a minute.
And just to quickly refresh your memory, if you recall, VDOT, through their communications budget, paid for the creative work. John Lynch also signed a memorandum of agreement with the PDC for that $200,000, so we cut the bureaucracy out. I mean, we're not sitting here critiquing and approving this. This was their deal, and now the implementation of what they've developed will start coming out of the budget that the subcommittee is managing.
So thank you for that. I think a really important thing to notice is to note that I think, quite frankly, Matt was pretty surprised by was how receptive our local media have been to partnering on this. He went and we had contacted them all for the matching grant program to make sure that they would be prepared to partner with these small businesses when they came to them. We had got an incredibly receptive opportunity from them. They said, we're going to go above and beyond, we're going to make deals, because they see the importance of this to them as both a business and as a community supporter. So all the companies that you see here are partners and have really agreed to multiply the benefits that they'll be giving to people, and so I think we'll see some really, really good coverage here. The creative concept, again, kind of getting with that human focus, profiling impacted businesses from all four quadrants to show that these are real local people who have been and will continue to depend on their neighbors as customers. The tone is warm, friendly, inviting, not desperate or needy, as I mentioned. Featured folks will be shown in TV and print ads, and their stories will be shared, and they really will be, the tone will be invitational to help local residents feel a part of supporting these businesses that are worth the drive. Next one. So I mentioned stickers. The Oval stickers, we'll be printing a bunch of those. You've seen them for OBX. You've seen them for lots of different places. RVA, well, we're going to have one for Rio and 29 now, and those will be distributed as far and widely as we can. The newspaper concepts will be focusing on people like Jen Poole at the Great Frame Up, Kevin Carson at Charlottesville Power Equipment. We're going to spread throughout the quadrants and make sure we have everybody represented, different kinds of businesses. Again, telling their story, how long they've been here, what they're all about, and that they want you to know that you can get to them and that you can continue patronizing them. TV concept will be the same kind of thing. And website, again, will be an opportunity to share these plus many other business profiles and business information, also to help people feel like they can navigate to these places.
So you'll have your own website for this.
Yes.
Okay. And I presume a link through VDOT and the county and okay. Wow.
And then these are door hangers. So go like this. As you can see that they're planning on spreading these through the neighborhoods in the vicinity. Again, just the awareness piece so that people will get that sense of feeling invited and welcome to continue patronizing these businesses even during tougher times. The paid media plan I'll show you real quickly. The idea, as I said, is to really surround the customer, starting not too far in advance, but probably in April is when you'll see the bulk of this stuff get started. Obviously ramping up for May, June, July, August, but saving some for a taper at the end, because we want to be able to, after it's done, make sure we're circling back to bring people back if they have changed their pattern during the construction. The media mix, as you can see, I talked about the pre-work, April to May, the very intense time during the May to September period, and then the come back, we're done message. And we're saving a contingency of the money so that as this develops, as we see, wow, this is worse here than we thought, or this kind of ad is particularly effective, or we really need to reinforce or supplement, we'll have an ability to do that as the campaign unrolls. And then this just shows you by media type what the sense is of when these will play. And then the idea of, yes, we're open. This is a message that we want to make sure is part of the campaign. And there's been some thought, you may remember that the chamber at one point talked about a sign, an outdoor sign. Is there a place that we could put this? You all just had a signage discussion. I think we're thinking about and looking into whether there's a private property owner in a vicinity that would make sense where signage could go up.
And that would be off VDOT
Off
right
VDOT
away.
right away, yes. Yes. As I mentioned, soliciting public relations support from local media, profiles through the business editors and those folks that are not necessarily paid advertising, and creating events to attract shoppers to the area over the coming months. The website, Facebook page, those kinds of things will be keeping active as well. And then on March 15th, the Chamber has really become supportive of the portion of this that's about supporting the local businesses. They have committed to, they do an after-hours program once a month. They've committed to, from March through September, doing their after-hours at various locations up and down the corridor. They're going to be at Doubletree and other places. Yeah. March 15th, they're going to be at Colonial Auto. Pete Borges is obviously one of your members. And they have agreed that we can use that March 15th event as a time to give a sneak peek at all these materials and items. We're not going to do a big presentation or anything, but a show and tell. We'll have the oval stickers to hand out. The Get Around Guide that VDOT has been working on with the Chamber is something we're hoping to have ready to show then too. Have a few of the TV spots on monitors, have some posters up so that the business community, particularly in that area, gets an opportunity to see what's going to be unrolled as part of the collective marketing campaign. What did I miss, Jeff?
I think one of the only other things that we just talked about again at the last meeting, and Matt is working on, Pete had originally brought up, just like some of the ads that have the businesses featured, creating a template with that so that whether it's for the matching program, grant program, or for self-funded advertising, the businesses could just grab that template, have somebody help them put their face and their story in it, and use that on their own, which should bring down any of their own personal costs for developing that type of marketing material.
I do want to just say real quickly, I think I mentioned this last night to our board, one of the things that's been gratifying to see from an economic development perspective is that a lot of the businesses that we've worked with in the workshops and the mentoring and the matching grant program are people who really had not done this work before, or who were not engaged in social media or hadn't really thought about that. So in addition to the short-term get through the construction thing, it's really, we think, an investment in the capacity of that area to generate.
So that's not marketing knowledge these people can carry forward.
That's exactly right.
Sure.
So there is an economic development aspect of it that we think is important.
I think it's also important to know that VDOT is not going to stop their communications program either. I mean, VDOT has a considerable budget that'll start up for more actively in the spring, which will be sort of an overlay to all of this about traffic conditions and construction alerts and what's happening, as well as like the get around map and some tools that expenses that VDOT is going to be continuing to undertake. As we said earlier, really the point of the $200,000 contribution to the $100,000 was to put that in the hands of the business committee to be focused on the businesses, and then the Commonwealth kind of get out of the way of that and let you guys. I think you've done an incredible amount of work in a short period of time, and it seems like, to me anyway, the first time I've seen this, zeroed in on a specific program that you're ready to kick off. So, how did it go, Ken? I'm presuming it went well with the Board of Supervisors?
I will let them speak for themselves. I know when it's time to sit down.
Yeah, it went well. There was a lot of discussion around it.
Yeah.
I can chime in if she'd like to. But,
Yeah, okay. Good.
I think it was great. I did want to circle back to the point that Karen made at the beginning about other markets. And
Yeah.
if there's any geographic, I don't think we're here yet, Lee, but Karen mentioned there apparently have been some advertisements, perhaps in Waynesboro and the Fredericksburg areas, putting out some incorrect information about.
Okay.
Discouraging travel. to
That's a really good
area.
point. We'll make sure that we
Easier to
make
get to
Matt
us than
aware
it
of
is,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's important to know. Thank you.
Apparently there's a auto dealer sort of saying, the long and short of it was,
Get away from them.
yeah, get away from them, come see me. Which,
We're gonna
I mean,
get to the bottom of that.
business is business. So, but that's going to be important to know, so we'd be proactive on that end. Yeah. Maybe we can go start a project in Waynesboro.
Face them this way.
Just come outside and make some comments. Have you
Henry?
done marketing for small and not so small business at different times? I think this is an excellent program. And I'm very happy with the logo, because the logo is very smart, using the plus sign for ant, which is also a crossroads, if you look at it. And then where's the drive? So that whole logo and the tagline, I think, is very good. Very good. I'm very pleased with it. I couldn't have come up with anything better.
We had a lot of, we worked through a lot of iterations, so I'm glad. Started out in a certain place and really wrestled it to get here. But
I'm impressed with the final product. You did a great job there.
well, wasn't me, but thank you.
Anything else for Chip or Lee? Yeah, and we will get Matt back. I mean, Chip, I'll kind of rely on you to just tell me, hey, this would be a good time to get him back whenever it is. And, all right. Any new business from anyone?
I just wanted to say, well, we've got county, VDOT, our city representative left, but we've got everybody in the room. Going back a little bit to the snow discussion earlier, I thought the communications, the joint communications and the interaction that went on between the city and the county, and I think they must have been getting information from VDOT as well, because there was information about the road closures. I just thought it was fantastic. It reached a level that I've never seen since I've lived here, and just wanted to commend everybody on the job that was done of getting information out about what roads weren't working well and shelters that were open. And this obviously goes beyond just 29, but following up on the communications discussion we just had in partnership, it was as a citizen, I thought it was very.
Well, I know it was an intense time for Lou, and I think Lou actually camped out. Where did he camp out?
Residency.
The residency during the snow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There you are.
So it's-
There's a lot of camping going on.
Yeah, a lot of camping. Okay.
Well, it was really the first time that we used our regional online incident management software in the way that we've been trying to do for years, but this one we have a new program, it worked really well, so.
Good.
To see that it was impactful.
Good. You know, well, as all of you know, particularly the VDOT folks, is you're either ahead of the situation on a snow event, or you're in deep trouble because once you lose it, there's no getting it back. Right, Joel?
Yeah.
You've never lost one.
No, I'm actually hoping for the next one, this month will be a little bit better.
A little bit.
The end of this month, is that what you're hearing?
In the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I always like to have 2 snowstorms a year so we can improve.
There you go. There you go. Wrap up. Chip, any wrap up? Morgan? Thank you. Mark? Brad? Nope. Karen? Henry? Okay, thank you again, and we'll see you February 18th. Take care.
I got a few minutes. Yeah.
Oh.
Mainly it's that I need to know exactly what you're saying. It's a discount.
That really is.
Hey, Morgan, they managed to take those ideas.